Okay, great. This morning we're going to be talking about Windows 11. It has made all the news and everybody's talking about it. And of course, one of the big things that always comes about whenever something new is announced is, what's the difference? What makes this better than or will make this more challenging than what I'm currently doing? How do I have to change? And is that change worth it? I think that is a fair place to start with this. But again, I'm not looking at this from an IT technician standpoint, although that's my strengths. I'm looking at it strictly from a security standpoint. So in all of this, we're talking about Windows 11, but we're investigating it specifically in relation to the key security changes or features that are going to be implemented or mandated. We'll find out about that in a minute, in Windows 11. Okay, so the two main Windows 11 security features, and I'm sure if you read any article about this, the two ones are called TPM 2.0, which is Trusted Platform Module, I believe, is what TPM stands for, and Secure Boot. And Chris, have you heard anything about these two, and what, generally speaking, is the agreement or the concern about these two?
I've heard about both of those two. The general concern is the easiest one, I can tell you. Not a lot of computers have those two available, especially TPM, especially. Without going into gory details, I have experience updating Windows to a certain version that requires the Trusted Platform Module. Mm-hmm. And sometimes those computers don't have the Trusted Platform Module, so there's other mitigation or workarounds that we do in order to update the computer to believe it has a TPM, the Trusted Platform Module. And Secure Boot is an issue. I don't think actually Secure Boot's an actual issue. But again, some computers have it, some computers don't have it. And the requirements, the hardware is required, especially the article you posted on Facebook, is the biggest, loudest complaint about Windows 11.
Right. Generally speaking, these are both good. They make good security sense. And we'll get into that a little bit as we're going on here. But the challenge you run into, for example, let's use the, I think it's the EPA, actually got a law passed this year that says any vehicle modification that can affect the emissions of a car or truck or, SUV or anything like that is illegal now. You cannot modify a car that rolls off the showroom. You can't change the exhaust. You can't change the fuel injectors. You can't, et cetera, et cetera. Any change you make that changes an OEM vehicle is now considered illegal. And they are starting to arrest owners of a lot of these, custom hot rod shops and this sort of thing, and level massive fines against them. So they're actually going after these folks, the people who try and make, cars a little better or tweak a car or, put this car together with this car and make it into something special or whatever. That's, if you want to think about it, it's the customization group that is suffering the most from this. The reasoning is you can likely affect the security of your vehicle, and you can likely affect the emissions of your vehicle. When you're trying to increase power, you don't care so much about emissions, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the trade-off there, and the government has stepped in and said, you will not modify your vehicles. Okay, so that's sort of laying the groundwork here. When we talk about TPM 2.0 and Secure Boot, this is coming from Microsoft. And what they're doing is they're saying that these features are now necessary, but the people who are suffer or have the risk of being impacted the most are the people who assemble their own computers. They buy a motherboard out of a box from, China or whatever. They put their hard drive in it. They put their memory in it. They put their, whatever. They put all their pieces together, and they boot it up, and it works just fine with Windows 10. But with Windows 11, it may or may not work. And that I think is one of the key concerns is it removes the home builders or places them in a position of higher risk where they have to take this into account as they're building computers. So just a thought on that. And again, it goes back to, we're all better when we are all the same. Well, maybe not.
As a kind of related but kind of off topic, there was an executive order that went through from Joe Biden's desk called Right to Repair.
Yes.
And I'll post the link on CNET on the chat.
Yep.
And, saw that. And my understanding of what Right to Repair is, a lot of the custom-made computers, if let's say your computer's running right now and all of a sudden, poof, it goes away. Some computers can be unscrewed and go through, and you can just take apart and fix it and put it back together, and then boom, you can light it up and you're happy and great. A lot of the user computers now that are sold in Costco are not as customizable anymore. Like my HP Pavilion, I would have to have either get a professional to look at it or do some very clever research on YouTube or iFixit. But HP comes out and says, you do that, you break your warranty on your computer.
Right.
And
yeah, that's another great analogy. Right to Repair, simply stated, or as I understand it, is that a manufacturer can no longer prohibit you from attempting to fix your own stuff simply because you have a chance at breaking it or adversely affecting it. If you fix it over here, it breaks something over here, etc. I heard a discussion in reference to vehicles when we talk about Right to Repair. And somebody said that in some of the more advanced vehicles on the road today, there are as many as 200 sensors. And, any one or two of which could cause your little check engine light to come on. And so what do you do with it? Well, you can buy those aftermarket modules that you plug into your port on your car, and it can actually give you diagnostics that give you ideas based on the diagnostic code that's being generated by the various features that are checking each other. But the Right to Repair makes sure that we retain the ability to do that ourselves individually. And the manufacturers cannot, I saw another one with Tesla. There was a certain Tesla computer system, something went amiss in it, and Tesla was going to charge the owner $13,000 to fix it. And they took it to a shop, and the shop was able to fix it for like $600, but Tesla was basically saying that invalidates the warranty. So it gets into who can decide what can be done with what I own. I guess that's a way to say it, and that falls right into this discussion about Windows 11, because both of these security features and I saw an article on this morning. At the moment, required for the implementation of Windows 11. And he kept saying at the moment. The reason is he mentioned that these two features were also originally planned to be mandated in Windows 10. But Microsoft didn't believe that the public and the industry were yet mature enough in order to be able to handle these as an actual requirement. And this particular person, who had lots of letters after his name, you know, alphabet soup, including CISSP, he said they've done this before, they've gotten right up to the implementation point and then backed off because of the industry backlash. He thinks that the same sort of thing is going to occur either right before Windows 11 drops or soon thereafter, if there is this tidal wave of protest against it. But, you know, is it going to happen? Well, right now, all indicators are that it will. So let's talk about it from a security standpoint. And here's something that Microsoft quoted. They said, our research shows that there were 60% fewer active malware reports from machines reporting detections to Microsoft 365 Defender with HVCI enabled compared to systems without HVCI. Now, the HVCI is the equivalent, the enterprise equivalent, like Windows 10 Enterprise, the equivalent to TPM 2.0 and Secure Boot. So, you know, it's considered to be comparable, but Secure Boot and TPM 2.0 are more at the individual user level rather than at the enterprise level. But Microsoft is basically saying, if we as an industry enable these security features, it's going to significantly drop the capability of malware to get to us. And I've got my take on it in a couple more slides. But this is straight from Microsoft. So anyway, let's talk about TPM a little bit. I'm not going to get into deep details, but here are some of the things that TPM allows you to do. Number one, you can guard your login password for Windows 10 home systems. Previously, that has been stored in an encrypted form on your hard drive within your OS. But the TPM allows it to be stored in a containerized location that can't be easily modified. You can't go in and say, change the no to a yes. Okay, it's, oh man, I don't have it with me, but like your PIV card for the federal government. Your PIV card has a chip built into it, and it has a little computer built into it who, among other things, the sole purpose of that chip is to take your PIN input and compare it, compare it to what's on the chip. And if it matches, to say yes. That's all, it does a bunch of other things, but that's literally what's on the PIV card. Compare against the PIN. Does it match? If so, click yes. Return a yes. And then everything else keeps going. That can't be written to. You can change the PIN, but you can't change the logic that examines that PIN, which is not writable. So that's built into the card. Well, TPM does the same sort of thing. It brings that examination and approval capability into an area that can't be easily written to. So that's the point of it. And we talked about this, gosh, probably 3 or 4 months ago, where we talked about virtualization and containerization. But anyway, let's keep going. TPM2 allows you to generate and manage cryptographic keys used to lock your system or specific files. Again, the point of this is it is a hardened location that other things can't easily get to except to review. You can't change the code in TPM 2.0 easily. All you can do is say, take a look at this. Does it match the criteria, yes or no? And TPM returns the yes or no. Also, you use TPM with Windows BitLocker or other drive encryption utilities. TPM is mandated as part of BitLocker. Okay? Here's another thing to think about. When you think about BitLocker, well, you probably know a lot about BitLocker, Chris, but what does BitLocker do and what can't it do? Do you know that much?
BitLocker can basically secure, think of it as a fort around your hard drive.
Mm-hmm.
That fort pretty much protects the outsiders from the inside.
Uh-huh.
What it cannot do is attack the other way. It's probably my best analogy that I can provide. For example, it does not prevent the attacker from breaking the wall. I'm sorry, I'm going through a hard thought here.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah. Let's look at it from a little bit different standpoint. Let's pretend this is my SSD hard drive that's loaded into my Windows 10 system. BitLocker allows you to fully encrypt this so that if this is taken out of the computer and put into another computer, it will be entirely unreadable and uncrackable. Okay, it's also known as full disk encryption, or FDE. So that's the main feature of BitLocker. It protects everything, including where your operating system is stored. Go ahead.
You cannot, let's say that phone breaks, you cannot take that hard drive and put it into another phone and expect it to work again if it's relying upon certain conditions that need to be met. There's actually a key that's stored in the, where's it stored? It's stored somewhere in the memory, and it has to have a certain part of the memory in order. I think it's called a public key or a private key. It's either one of those two. I don't remember which one.
It's called a recovery key.
Recovery key.
Yep. And here's the thing. And all of us are going to go, oh no. The recovery key is part of your operating system, because remember, BitLocker is made by Microsoft. It's part of your operating system, so your OS recovery key, that thing that popped up at the beginning when you were first loading Windows 10 Home Edition, and it said, write this down, or print this out, or save this somewhere off of your computer. How many of us did that?
None of us. No.
That's your recovery key in case you have to take this and put it somewhere else. It's your OS recovery key as far as BitLocker is concerned. Other things, other full disk encryption utilities, it's different. But and again, this is Windows 10 Home. If it were Windows 10 Enterprise, there are keys up at the enterprise level in the security account manager in, for example, the Windows Active Directory domain controllers. And those can actually be pushed, like my wife just said, they can be pushed down to the local system. Because if you remember, in an enterprise, your security is inherited. Do you remember what I mean by that? You've got a, let's say a Windows 10 Enterprise computer, and it doesn't own its own accounts. The accounts are actually created within the Active Directory environment that are then, their permissions are then pushed down to your computer. And your computer then, all it says is, who's allowed to access this? Oh, people who have domain admin privileges, or people who have schema admin privileges, etc. So it's inherited. The accounts and the security levels are established here, and then this is forced to adhere to them. Yes?
From a work enterprise level, I believe, I'm going back to your the code that you need to take the BitLocker out. That's true. I believe on the home Windows laptops now, where the end user use, they just have what's called recovery boot partition.
Yep.
And if something happens to it, heaven forbid, or you have a software issue with the OS, you can just say, hey, reset my machine back to either A, the last known good backup, or last known good one, or
yep.
B, just clean wipe and boom, it's back again.
Yes.
You can't just necessarily, well, it's tough. I'll let you continue, sorry.
But no, your point is well taken. And the reason that's there is for ease of use. You know, if something gets totally mangled, how do Microsoft allow you to securely reset your system? However, that's not the same as taking your disk and moving it somewhere.
Right.
Remember, the main, or one of the main security features is what's known as mobile device encryption. And that's turned on in Bitlocker and these other disk encryption utilities. So here's the thing, and this is where I was trying to go with this. What Bitlocker can't do is protect the boot system and the initial load for the operating system, because those occur before you get into this guy. So you have to have that decryption capability prior to accessing this. So TPM 2.0 takes and moves that capability. I think you remember we used the word rootkits or bootloaders. They actually put it into the BIOS, or they hide it within memory, and BIOS refers to it, and next thing you know, you get malware, and you say, oh, well, all I need to do is reboot my computer. You reboot your computer, and it's still there. Okay, so even full disk encryption capabilities such as Bitlocker have their limitations, because you have to be able to decrypt before you get to this guy, and therefore you're out in the actual computer boot and hardware area before you get into your disk. So, and we'll talk about that in just a minute, but TPM also allows you to store fingerprints for, like, what's that called?
Biometrics.
Yeah, biometrics. And it will allow you to enable your smart card readers. By the way, just talking biometrics while we're on the topic. Oh, that's from you. Okay. Biometrics. There have been some court cases, and I don't know the outcome of it, but there have been court cases where people have sued their employers so that they can obtain the return and removal of their biometrics, which were used for their account logins, from that particular enterprise. And why is that? Why do you think?
Data protection.
Well, what is a fingerprint?
Where are you going with this, Scotty?
Yeah, sorry about that. A fingerprint is unique to you. It is one of the three.
That's where you're going.
Three factors of authentication. And this one is what you are.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, remember, one is what you know, one is what you have, and one is what you are. By giving this to an enterprise for like my fingerprint reader or my iris scanner or whatever, you are basically handing them one of your 3 factors for authentication. But this is literally, for lack of a better way of describing it, this is your identity. And when you leave, the code that's used to validate this and the 24 discrete points where they double check all of this thing are retained in the computer in machine code that says, if you see this, this is Scotty Ward. And so these people have sued, like from the Electronic Freedom Foundation, Electronic Freedom Foundation, they've sued and said things like, you can't keep that because you have no need for it, and by you keeping it and not eliminating it, you are keeping one of my factors that tells who I am. Well, what happens if you're compromised? Then my factor, not just user ID and password, but now multi-factor capability workarounds are now out in the dark web. Good morning, Douglas.
Hi, good morning, everyone.
So there have been, and we're on a side trip here, Douglas. We were just talking about multi-factor authentication and how some people have been suing to get their fingerprints back from their enterprise and require that their fingerprint factor, the math that goes into determining this, be removed, forcefully removed from the system and all backups. So it's a real, makes a lot of sense, but a lot of people didn't think about that. They rushed to implement it, but they don't know how to remove it that quickly. So, the problem you run into, it's sort of like, if you want to think about it, it's sort of like having your password still out there.
Mm-hmm.
If you have your password out there and you have your fingerprint out there, guess what? You now have 2 factors for your multi-factor authentication. And if somebody compromises it, they have now the capability to override all of the safety involved in multi-factor authentication.
Mm-hmm. I made that mistake with Apple in my iPad.
Yeah.
I got convinced by a millennial. They are very quick to implement all these kind of things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, we were talking about, as you can see on the screen, we were talking about the advantages of TPM 2.0, and we were saying it allows you to store recorded fingerprints. Again, the point is they are stored, right now your fingerprint is stored on your computer, but it's stored on the hard drive. The TPM moves that into this firmware type container or hardware based container to where it can't be messed with easily. So yes, there are your fingerprints are stored locally right now. Your Bitlocker decryption PIN or whatever you want to call it is stored locally. Cryptographic keys to lock your system or files, and your login password for Windows 10, they're all being stored locally, but they're being stored in an area that it's possible, not easy, but it's possible to get a hold of it and compromise it. TPM 2.0 moves it all within that TPM container, and therefore that makes it easier to
this was not for my system, my computer. This was for my iPad. The iPad, that's for Apple.
Right.
So I don't know. Do you know if there's a way to get it back or remove it? I don't know
Remove
why
what?
they store it.
What are you talking about with the iPad? I'm talking about TPM 2.0. Okay, fingerprints.
Yeah, but I didn't do it with Windows. I did it with iPad only.
Okay, so you're talking about the Apple authentication.
Right.
I don't know. Honestly, I haven't studied it, but I presume it's similar to Microsoft. And Apple, if you think about it, Apple has the added benefit of being a managed operating system. Microsoft does a lot of things. In fact, Microsoft, well, let me make sure I get this right. The new, what is it, MX2 Apple chip, whatever it's called, I think it was called MX2, is actually a Linux kernel-based operating system now. So guess what? Windows and Apple are now based off similar Linux kernels, the whole operating system. Why? Because it's open featured and it has the ability to be upgraded easier, takes less manufacturer-specific code. So, you know, it's moving toward open systems architecture, which, you know, in many cases the government requires for the use for their enterprises. So, just I don't know, whatever's occurring with Windows 10 is probably going to also be reflected similarly within Apple soon. If it's not already there, Apple may already have these features enabled. I just don't know. So anyway, that was TPM 2.0. Now let's talk about Secure Boot, and then we're going to get into how to look for it on your particular system. Secure Boot is not Microsoft's. It's from the actual computer industry, and the point is to make sure that the device boots with trusted OEM operating systems. So the problem you run into is, what if you're using a thumb drive OS, for example? How do you figure out whether that's trusted or not? So the point is, it helps to keep bogus operating systems or jacked up operating systems, an operating system that somebody has gone in and modified, from being able to boot your computer. Okay, so that's the main purpose of Secure Boot. Now, here's my take on the whole thing. And I just wrote this up. The TPM 2.0 and Secure Boot requirement allows Windows OS and application designers to take full advantage of certificate signing and virtualization or containerization at the device boot level, which significantly reduces the possibility of compromise due to rootkits, bootloaders, and code spoofing. That's the main value that I see. In other words, a rootkit would not be successful anymore on a Windows 11 OS system with TPM and Secure Boot enabled, for example. All right, so do I have TPM 2.0? Do I have Secure Boot? And here are the two ways to look it up. In fact, I'm going to share my other screen, and we will step through these side by side. I'm going to change over to this screen.
You might have touched up on this already, but is TPM 2.0 exclusive to Windows 11, or that's already in Windows 10?
It's already in Windows 10, and it's already in most computers.
Okay.
Anything that's been built since, I think, 2005 has had TPM in it. So anyway, let's go take a look. We're going to click on Start, and oh, it's not starting. Hey, it's not starting. Oh, great. Not allowing me to click on it. Let's see if I can find out why it's doing that. Arg. Try this one more time. Start. It's not allowing me to type.
Uh-oh.
Uh-oh is right. Anyway, I guess if you guys want to try it, there, I just changed my view, and hopefully that'll allow me to difference. No, it won't. I can't type. I don't know what I've done, and I don't know how to correct it quickly, so let me go back to share this other screen. Wow. It won't even allow me to share this other screen. Okay, anyway, on your particular computer, if you're running Windows 10, go into the Start menu and type tpm.msc. You can do that now if you like.
Done it.
And when you do, you'll see the TPM screen, and it will basically say whether or not you have TPM 2.0.
TPM
Huh?
TPM dot what?
TPM.msc.
MSC, okay.
And I did it on my computer, and it says, yep, you're ready for TPM 2.0. Do you see that?
True platform status TPM is ready for use. Mm-hmm.
Yep. Oh, here it is, tpm.msc. Okay. Do you guys see this on my screen?
Yep.
Okay. So basically it says the TPM is ready for use. And it says this is with my AMD motherboard, and the specification is 2.0. Now, just so you know, there are 2 or 3 different types of TPM if you want to think about it. One is hardware-based, one is firmware-based, and the third is aftermarket hardware. So it could be built into your motherboard, or your motherboard could have a series of pins where you can buy it's like $18 or something, a TPM chip, and plug it into your motherboard, and you will have this. But anyway, this will tell you, because I'm running an AMD processor, I have virtualized. Mine is firmware based. Mine is not hardware based because of my AMD processor. So
what if yours says INT something?
What's that?
What if yours says INT? I don't know if that has to do with Intel.
Under manufacturer information or available or status?
Under TPM manufacturer information, it says INTC.
Intel. I have that too, and I have an Intel processor.
Yeah.
So what is that? Is it hardware or firmware or?
Oh, most likely if it says Intel, it's built into your motherboard. And I'm just making a guess, but that sounds like it's in your motherboard. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now the other one, to tell if you have secure boot. Again, type or click on Start and type System Information and select it. Just the 2 words, System Information. And you're going to look for the thing that says Secure Boot State. Mm-hmm. And if you notice, mine's already on.
This one says on.
Okay?
Yep. Yep.
So you're in good shape in reference to Windows 11. Now there are other feature requirements that are in Windows 11, but these were the 2 main disqualifying features, let's call them. And so this has been the greatest conversation in reference to Windows 11 implementation, if you bought your computer off the shelf within the last 5 years and are just using a regular computer that you haven't modified, except maybe to add CPU, to add RAM or something like that, most likely Windows 11 will be very easily accommodated by your computer. So those are the two ways to check it, to see if you have Secure Boot and to see if you have TPM 2.0. All right? So anyway, that was everything I had for today. And again, my computer screen is not allowing me to do a lot of things. So I'm thinking that I have something that I'm not seeing here. Let me try an Alt F4. Nope. Oh well. Anyway, that's all I had for this morning. Did you guys have anything else to bring up?
As a discussion topic, and our mentorship works with the business point of view, from the provider's point of view. Windows 11 brings up interesting logistical and what your end users need to be trained for. Trained is the word that I would use here. It's a new operating system, something they have to get used to. You're going to have a variety of people who are not as computer savvy as myself, Scotty, and Doug, that are going to freak out, is the best term I can use. You're changing this on me. Why are you changing this on me? Why is Microsoft doing this? Along with some words I won't say in the recording. But that's something to think about as a business, is this is coming. And Microsoft is going to say Windows 10 is no longer supported at this date. Right. You need to start the plans now, in my opinion, and just keep watching the news.
Everyone does.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone does. Yeah. Let me just apply, some of my ancient history knowledge here. When people started to use keyboards and personal computers at work, it was no longer an option that you couldn't type. You couldn't get by without knowing how to type. And there were a lot of people that said, I can't learn. But it was absolutely required as part of their job. So this follows along with that same expectation. If you're going to be using the tools, you have to have the capability to use them. And what this will do is, for people who are so resistant as to be belligerent about it, they're going to get moved to places where their work is not going to be computer-based, or they're going to be asked to retire. It's just expected. I mean, look at all the people that use these little guys that have no clue what they're doing or how they're going to be able to do it securely or anything like that. They just like, oh, well, I just punch stuff in and, oh, look, I get Facebook and, oh, they're out there. But at the enterprise level, you can't have those loose cannons running around in your enterprise because they become a security risk. If they're not smart, you can't keep them. Mm-hmm. They either get smart or they get another job somewhere else. And it may sound cruel, but go back to the typing requirement. What if you can't type? Well, maybe you can drive a truck. So, sorry to say, but this is not something that is really optional these days, because there are no alternatives. if you're going to operate on the enterprise, you have to operate within the expectations of the enterprise.
My point here, Scotty, is to make sure that the outreach is there and let the users know that this is coming.
Absolutely.
And honestly, yes, it's going to sound like it's going to be, I'm going to do all this work for nothing because I'm not going to listen. You're just going to press delete on every thing. But what you don't want is go ahead and blindside them with the update, and boom, your help desk is swamped with calls going, wait a minute, what changed?
Absolutely.
Was I not known?
Yeah, and having been there at the enterprise service desk, you know, in the last 6 years at our federal agency, we went through that. People are like, why'd you do this? It's absolutely essential to make sure that we preserve the integrity, the confidentiality and availability, you know, let's go back to the triad, of the data that we are legally responsible for.
Mm-hmm. It's not the cool, attractive side of cybersecurity, but it has to be done as part of the business.
That's right. That's right.
So, have you done the switch? Or actually, I think the right question to ask, it's from the perspective of a cybersecurity expert or specialist. If you were working in a company as a CS guy, would you suggest the company to go along and get the Windows 11, or would you wait until they get the bugs? You know, what is the advisable thing at this point?
Yeah, that's always the trade-off. You have to look at the features and the discomfort of changing versus the benefits or the risk of not doing so, and that's always done at levels far above us. You can recommend certain things and point out, say, you know, does anybody think about this? But it needs to be done at the C level by somebody who is informed. What you can do is help to inform them of the pros and cons. Here are the benefits, here are the drawbacks, and you can even make your recommendation, although your bosses may not care what your recommendation is, honestly. You know, we're talking about entry-level cybersecurity. Mm-hmm. And frequently, you don't have the big picture. Frequently. Mm-hmm. You may think you have most of it, but you may not have all of it. Right. For example, during the cyber sprint in 2015-2016, where every federal government agency was required to invoke multi-factor authentication. Everyone. Well, had they done it immediately as the federal government required, like over half of our federal government agencies' legacy applications would have stopped immediately and would not have been able to be fixed. So, shall we stop, you know, the thing that's used to calculate overtime expenses for any American citizen? No. So you've got to balance the two, your agency needs versus the impact, and that's always going to be there.
Another thing to go ahead, Scott.
No, go ahead, Chris. I'm done.
Thing to think about, Doug. A lot of these things take time and processes, but also the legacy operating systems will fight hard to stay on your network, either by the end user, or it's all by the end user at this point, because a certain software does not function or a certain website does not function very well without having Windows 7 on that machine. If you upgrade it up to a Windows 10 machine, something happens to it, you have to go through the effort of fixing it, or B, it doesn't work at all. So it's planning, it's troubleshooting, it's everything. It's not, again, as I said, it's not the most attractive part of cybersecurity, but it needs to be done.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, it's inevitably you'll be faced with this. Like you said, it's a business. They will. Some people, I think, some people talk about. I read it somewhere that it looks like Windows 10 was here to stay, but they have to keep developing so they can sell more and more.
Right. The discussion about Windows 10 here to stay did not take into account the current spate of security compromises and the extremely high cost of all of these compromises occurring. In other words, Windows 10 had the ability to do certain things to help stem this tide of bad things happening, but did not mandate that it occur. So Windows 11 mandates that those security features be turned on.
Okay.
You know, and from a security standpoint, that's our main focus here. Not so much the technical, but the security features, which were available and are available if you have version 21H1 or higher in Windows 10, which all of us, if we're following our patching and upgrade schedule, should have. 21H1 or higher, you already have these features, and all you have to do is get them enabled.
Hey, Scotty, I've been moving DistaStig announcements over to my archive folder, just not my focus at this time. Has Dista come out with any STIGs about Windows 11 at all, or is it still in the making process of it, or is it still in the production?
No, actually, if you remember the whole TPM discussion that we've had this last year, TPM 2.0 has been on and enabled.
Oh,
that's right. Secure Boot is a BIOS setting that has been on for several years. So this is a set of security features that are already enacted in most enterprises, I would venture to guess.
Okay.
But now they're bringing that down to the home level. Okay.
Has anyone in you made the move already to Windows 11, or are you planning to?
No, I haven't. Well, I don't plan to get any of the pre-release versions of it because I only have Windows 10 operating on one computer. Well, actually I have two. But the thing is, if you have multiple computers, then you can do this. But if it's your only computer at home and you mess it up, is it worth it to you to have to rebuild it? And for many people, the answer to that is no. So I'm going to let the super geeks that have multiple computer systems at home to do their work on this one. And I will just let them do their job. And I will read the industry blogs and vlogs and YouTube videos that show what they've come up with, rather than me trying to investigate it myself.
Last one from me, Scotty. What you said about the TPM and the secure boot moving down to home, that does make sense to me, especially with the remote work remotely and work from home environments. That probably and enterprises that will want to connect to that kind of situation. I don't want to say BYOD. BYOD is an incorrect term here, but.
Well, but your point is made, though, Chris. This whole Windows 11 thing does not affect Android, does not affect Apple, and does not affect Linux kernel-based devices such as your network-attached storage, your network routers, your network switches, and your IoT devices. None of them are involved in this.
At the same time, though, even though none of them is involved with it, you still want to have policies in place where you all those devices are either A, have the security features that you need to have in order to make that work our enterprise environment fine, and B, we sit there and say thumbs up, it's allowed in our system from a business standpoint. Okay, I'm done.
Yep. Okay, that's all I had, guys.
Okay.
I appreciate it. I think this was a good one, and be sure to what do they say? Like, subscribe, and share. so that others will start seeing the value of the information that's being passed on. Again, this is a mentorship. It's not designed to be a tech forum. I'm not a Windows 10 expert. I'm not a Windows 11 expert. But I can look at things like operating system upgrades in reference to security requirements and be able to speak to them in that manner from a system and, a systems-based level. Okay?
Okay.
Cool beans, guys. Have a great evening.
All right, thanks.
Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.
All right, take care.